Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard, your host. Welcome again. Appreciate you being here. And boy, I tell you, the sun in Oregon in the Pacific Northwest is awesome. Awesome. It's shining today. It was shining yesterday. I took the time out to drive just in that sun. It was just beautiful. And by the way, and for you viewing audience, if you're here from the Pacific Northwest, please don't tell anybody back east that we're having a real neat day over here. But anyway, the fact of the matter is, it was really nice. It's really nice. And naturally, as far as what's going on now within our world, for that matter, we are worldly known now. We've got a president-elect. His name is Donald Trump, and he's gotten us on the front of stage. We on front stage, sitting right up front. We've got all kinds of media connections as a result of that, and then even from a local standpoint, from the standpoint of Oregon, for that matter, we're historical in our way. We're still on the table historically, because as you note, the big issue here, we as opposed to the mega, he basically took the brand. But we had the brand earlier. What can we do to get the city of Portland great again? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so we're still doing it. We're still here, and we're saying that we're going to continue on, and we're going to get to the point where we're going to make Oregon great again through Portland, the city of roses, back again, if you will. Our living room right here in the state of Oregon. Our living room, and we're here, the Oregon Voters Digest. Well, I've got John Leuenberger here with me today, and he's the young fella that's come on and willing to sit up there and take the hits with reference to the Oregon Voters Digest. And for those of you who are sort of new, and some of the folks from a historical standpoint, the Oregon Voters Digest is a historical piece. It's been around for years, and in fact, it was the first blue book of Oregon, and it was put together, and I just happened to have been working with the owner of it early on when I was at the Portland Observer newspaper. I was publisher at that point in time, and I did the typesetting for him. And he was publishing the Oregon Voters Digest, and we became friends. And he was an elderly gentleman, and again too, he was looking for someone to pick it up. And all of a sudden, next thing I knew, I was there, and I was assisting him while I was at the Portland Observer. And then he decided, well, because of medical reasons or whatever, he decided to give it up. He said, "Bruce, how would you like to sit in the chair?" And so I've been here ever since on that particular piece aspect of it. I'm no longer a publisher of the Portland Observer newspaper. That's a whole different media piece, but it's a media piece. So unfortunately, we don't have it anymore today. We had it at one point in time, but we don't have a paper. And that just gets right into it. I'm giving you a little history, a little background. For the benefit, normally for John, who's here first, right off the bat, and then for you who are new, and even some of the folks who have been here for days. You need to know what is the Oregon Voters Digest. It's a media. It is media aspect of it. It's that's one of the oldest media within the state of Oregon. Yep. And you can go through history aspect of it, and you can get access to the copies of the old historical copies of the Oregon at the Oregon Historical Society. And in fact, when I took it over, I gave all of the paperwork and all of the background material to the Oregon Historical Society, and so they've got it there. So, and the rationale there was that to keep it there, to keep that history there, here in Oregon, because that is the so-called vault of all of our history. So it's at the Oregon Historical Society. All you have to do is just ask the clerk that's sitting up in there, look, I want to do a couple of papers or something like that on Oregon history, and there's a lot of other stuff that's there. But if you want to get a feel for the Oregon Historical Society, the Voters Digest, you can ask for that, and they'll give you that material.
Well, to speak to the history of the show, I was like 20 years ago. I think I remember my father first appearing, or around that time, first appearing on the show with you.
Right.
The backdrop was a little different. I think back then you had like a little panorama of the city of Portland.
Exactly, right.
That's right. I remember guest appearing just briefly, coming on and just, getting my little 2 cent or 15 seconds of fame or whatever, just because it was cool to be on TV, right? Whatever it was.
Yeah.
But I remember my dad being on the show 20 years ago, so it's kind of it's an honor, but also kind of a nice homage to him to be able to be on and talk about the issues, not only about Oregon, but also on the national piece.
Yes. And he ran quite a bit of time.
He ran in
politics.
Locally, he ran for office. One of the biggest races that I remember from my childhood was when he ran for Supreme Court Justice against Reeves Kistler. And I don't know if you remember that race. That was a pretty monumental race. Reeves was the first openly homosexual Supreme Court Justice in the country at that point. And Reeves had a lot more money to his campaign than my father did. And Reeves won, but my father still got about 40% of the vote.
He did well. Yes, he did. Yeah, I remember
40% of the vote, and he only had about $1,500 to his campaign.
That's right.
When
and campaign from Voters Digest.
From Oregon Voters Digest, he was all over this state. I remember.
That's right.
It was quite a time, and not only did he run for Supreme Court Justice, he ran for Attorney General of Oregon. He ran for Multnomah County Judge.
Yep.
There were many opportunities that my dad took to run for public office. He really cared about this state. He cared about the people here. He cared about this country. He loved this country. He loved the Constitution. He loved the rights that we were guaranteed by the Founding Fathers, but also by God. God gave us the rights that we are given through the Constitution. He guaranteed it to us.
Yes.
That's what the founders wrote down.
Right, exactly. Boy, you bring back memories, I tell you. And during that particular time, as a result of what he was doing, he gave me the opportunity, if you will, and force and focus, if you will. And I ran every 2 years.
Yeah.
And I started getting involved in the whole process. And my whole process, and the only reason why I was doing it that way, I was more interested in the primary, getting my name, because beforehand, going out and trying to get the folks to come on the show to talk to them about the piece, if you will, to the voters, was pretty difficult. But when I put my name down there to run for office, I had access. I was right at the table talking to issues across the board, and then naturally ones I was familiar with and others that your father and I were interested in. We were able to get that communication. People were coming in, basically, and looking at the show for that matter.
Well, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you fall on, right? As long as you're having a discussion and your ultimate goal is to better the people within your community, whether it's your city, your county, your state, or your country, run or have these discussions that we have at this table. And that was something my dad was very passionate about. He really cared about giving people access to their rights and educating them on what their duties as a citizen are. It's important for you to know as a citizen of the state of Oregon, as a citizen of the city that you're in, as a citizen of this great country, that you are entitled to rights, that you are entitled to freedom. And you need to know that, and you need to act accordingly. You are not to be governed. You are to govern. You are a person with free will. You have freedoms that were guaranteed to you by God. So act accordingly. You are the employer of these people that are acting in the offices that we have elected them to. Remember that. You have the power. They don't have the power. You have the power.
Well, it's kind of interesting. Boy, I just looking at you, at the way you're just sharing and et cetera. And wow, I think about Jim every time I turn around. I think about Jim because one, he was a lawyer. Got my point. And every so often, like you said, he'd bring you here at the show, and we had those discussions accordingly. In the same way, he was very outspoken, et cetera, along that particular line. And so we basically built up on one another, if you will. I shared my side, he shared his side, and then I would pick. It was just a good feeling to know that we could communicate with no problem.
Well, and not just what I said about both sides of the aisle. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is either, right?
No, that's right.
It doesn't matter that I'm white, you're black, or whatever color of your skin is. We're all people at the end of the day. And we're all entitled to our opinions, but we all have the same end goal. We're here on Earth living the same life that we're trying to get through. We all have different experiences, yes, but the end goal is the same. We're just trying to get through this thing together. It doesn't matter what we look like. We need to work together.
Just a good point. For instance, you mentioned about the point about show you how dominant this thing of race is so much that there has to be mention about people's color. You got me?
Right.
When the issue when it was discussed in the Revolution. Way back when this country first began, and people don't realize that. And I say that to say that in the Revolutionary War, the people got together, totally. People of all colors and whatever, and genders and whatever, and they fought that revolution. And it was said, it's there in history, that the first person who shed blood in that revolution was an African slave. And he fought with the rest of the slaves. Okay, you got me? And but that's some solid history aspect of it. And as a result of that, the next generation of that whole piece was that when we had another Revolutionary War, which was a Civil War, Abraham Lincoln basically was part and parcel. That was his platform. And during that particular war, guess what? Blacks again served, if you will. And he basically came up with the Emancipation Proclamation for all people, for that matter. And while they were legislating this piece, they said, okay, fine, because they were African slaves, and the others, and when they were there were a few other folks that were there around there too. He said, well, look, all these folks now are going to be American citizens, just in layman's term. They're going to be American citizens, and he did that. That was the platform. And how he initiated that was through the fact that he basically enlisted the slaves again in the Union Army. They were allowed to participate in the Union Army.
Yep. And
that's where that 40 acres and a mule came from, because the bottom line is that's how they paid the troops, all the troops, and they fought in that war, big time. And there's a lot of history about the war, Bunker Hill, and all that other good stuff. And a lot of times there's some little, every so often there were some folks that were bringing this out, trying to communicate with the people across the board. But unfortunately, during that particular war, there was sort of discrimination between not wanting the blacks to fight in the war. It was just only designed, i.e., because it was a southern deal, and southern and the north, if you will, and it was just basically said these are just white males, and that came out, so to speak, but that wasn't the case. But Lincoln discovered that's why one of the reasons why he basically said, hey, look, how would you guys like to be free and come over here and fight with us? 'Cause we need the numbers,
right? And
then the war changed. But during that particular time, when they made the deal about that war, he said the South was actually participated, but the South were vice president, and Lincoln was the president, the North. So consequently, when the war was won by the North, the idea that whoever would win, if you will, that would be the flag of the United States. It could have been a Confederate flag, but all of a sudden it was the Union flag. So the vice president, who was i.e. the vice president, was the Union president.
Well, but let's just not. There's two wars. People of color have been instrumental in every war that we've fought.
Yeah, but we don't recognize that as far as the mass.
I do.
I know that. That's why we talk about it.
And history should. History should, because without people of color, we would not have had the military successes that we have had.
That's true. That's true. That's true.
World War II, people of color were very instrumental in our success. They weren't given the respect that they should have been. You served in Vietnam. Others served in Vietnam. We needed people of color in both of those wars.
Bodies.
Well, bodies are needed in every war, right?
Yeah.
But people of color have been instrumental to the success of in war, but also to the success of this nation.
Oh yeah. Well, it's right. Well, I mean, even in the late president, we had Eisenhower, but we also had a Colin Powell too.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a very legitimate person, if you will. But unfortunately, in all due respect, the race thing came up, so to speak, and his family basically said, no way, got me. And then a lot of the folks on the other side of the deal, the electorate, if you will, said no way, got me. But he was a solid guy, and like you were saying, there are many examples, if you will. But again, in all due respect, education is an issue. We just haven't been able to. I mean, really seriously put it in our education system. Well, we're still doing the same thing. We're still having to kind of, when we're talking to folks, it's always still the same thing. It's not the skin. We don't need to have that even in our dictionary.
You're absolutely right, and I think one of the things that I remember growing up during my era, I'm just turned 33. I remember learning about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, these fundamental documents that were integral to the success of this country, the Founding Fathers. I recently spoke to an educator who I'm very close with, and she informed me that children are not being instructed on these crucial documents and information that are necessary for them to understand where they get the rights that they're entitled to as citizens of the United States of America. That is telling. When the children are being misled by their educators, or not misled, but uneducated by their educators, and they're not being provided with vital information that empowers them to know that they are citizens and not subjects. That allows them to further fall into the category of a subject and not a citizen. If they don't know where the power comes from, they are more willing to give up the power in the future. So we need to start rattling the cages of the education system. And I think right now what we're seeing with the current president and his reform agenda in all of the different aspects, but especially in the Department of Education, is that he wants to he has said he wants to abolish the Department of Education on the federal level. We'll see how that plays out. But what we need to do as citizens of the state of Oregon and citizens of the states of all 50 states, and citizens in the city of Portland, citizens in all the cities of Oregon and the counties of Oregon, you need to go to your respective counties and cities, and you need to rattle on the cages of the school boards, and you need to demand that they start educating your children on these important and crucial subjects, on the Constitution, on the Bill of Rights, on the Declaration of Independence, on the Founding Fathers, on the real American history that the children are not being instructed on. If they aren't willing to do that, in my personal opinion, you should pull your children from the education system and start homeschooling them.
But it's kind of interesting. I appreciate that, but at the same time, they've got storage of a lot of that historic through our own historical society. We have a historical society for the state of Oregon, and that it's sitting there.
Okay.
Sitting on the shelf, so to speak. And then we got all of the other bookstores, like Powell and this, that, and the other. They're there. The information is there.
Yeah.
But the thing that sort of prevents them from getting to that information is not taught in the school system. The public school system, as far as I'm concerned, should be the best. Should be the best education one could get, if you will. I mean,
It should be.
It should be, but it's not. Okay.
Right.
I mean that's the way it's. But that's, and again too, is it the voting public is the one that picks up the tab.
So, like I said, you need to go in as a concerned citizen.
That's right.
You need to demand
At the school
that
board.
these school boards,
Yep.
these departments,
That's right.
you need to go to the city, you need to go to the county, you need to go to the state. You need to start demanding that they start educating your children.
Yeah.
And if they refuse to do so, it's my personal opinion that you pull your children out of their system and start homeschooling.
And or run for the school board.
Or run for the school board and affect change if you can.
Yep.
A lot of these school boards are entrenched in this bureaucratic system, similar to how the federal the federal government is finding that there's a lot of bureaucracy, unelected bureaucrats that are kind of bogging down the system.
Yeah. I might add to along that line. When you think about all kinds of things that comes up when we start talking about this particular issue. When you start thinking about how does a publication get into the school district, gets on the shelf. Well, they've got a group, if you will, and the chair state if that group, if you will, comes out of Texas, a southern area. So consequently, the books, if you're submitting a school, whatever, it goes through there. They have to get the sign off before it goes to the public school nationwide.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's there. I'm giving it to you in layman's terms as best I can, if you will. That's my point. But like you said, there's a lot here within the history that we're talking about that, I mean, you can really get into. And like you said, hey, the first place to start would, like you said, would be at the school board. Like you said, as a lay person, you have every right. You got your kids. You want to make sure that your kids get the right to get as much information as they possibly can to survive in this economy that we're into. Right? You got me? And so education is key. And like I said, the homeschool thing it's really sad that we have to go. A lot of folks, if they want to get the best, if you will, they do the homeschool, and then that means that the parents then have to either be an extension of what their problems are. They go out and do the research.
Well, but this public education system is a somewhat new process, in my personal opinion. Historically, parents have been vitally involved in the rearing up of their own children, and they haven't given the rearing up of their children over to the state. If you will. And that's a newer concept in our history. But parents, you go back before we're in the system that we're involved in, this new age of living, and parents were vitally involved in the education of their children. They were reared up in the home.
That's right. But they still have to reach out on that shelf and get a book. And if it depends upon, now, what did they reach up and got? See, they went through an education system.
Yeah, parents were educated by their parents.
That's right. Now, the key is that, did they pull that book on the whole issue of this issue that we're talking about, they're still talking about today? You got me? Did they spend a little bit about, it's all of us together. There's no such thing as skin color. They've got books up there that will talk about that. They got books that will talk about the Lincoln era. They'll talk about the makeup of what was the real cause of the whole issue of the Civil War, the Revolutionary War, the first blood. Somebody had to write it down. That history had to be written down. So they had a printing press somewhere around there that basically wrote this stuff. So that's the only thing you have access to. So we came up with a system called our education system. It should be the best school, the best education in the world, if you will, for that matter. Because at one point in time, we were there.
Yeah, well, we're 40th out of 40 in the world, in the developed world.
Exactly.
Which is abominable.
Exactly. Well, and by the way, I want to make sure that the viewing audience know that we're taking this time, if you will. Now, it's the end of the Black History Month, so to speak.
Yep.
And so we want to share that with you, kind of just getting a little discussion. maybe we'll just kind of switch over a little bit more now in terms of. I saw an interesting interview that that media did in regards to the president on Black History Month. Very interesting piece. I mean, he started talking about. He was the one that brought up the issue about the first blood in the Revolutionary War. You know what I mean? He brought the issue up, and he talked about it. And you can Google it on YouTube. You can Google that particular piece on Black History Month with the president, President Trump, and he had Tiger Woods was there he'd received a medal or something of that nature, or whatever accommodation, and the King kids were there. Well, the young adults right now aspect of it. Dr. King isn't here, whatever. I thought that was interesting, Dr. King. And there's always been this issue when I think about Dr. King. We always have a Dr. King Day, if you will. And everybody sort of gets together, and they have ceremonial kind of deals and this, that, and the other. And then whenever you start talking about the politics, what party did he belong to? He was a Republican. And that's sitting up in the history book. Now there are two sides there, because some folks are saying, no, he was a Democrat, this, that, and the other. But then, hey, but that's on the book. So depending upon whether or not you were able to read that book, right, or be in a nonpartisan mindset when you read both books, got me? Then you would understand what that's all about. But the fact of the matter is, then I thought about the fact that the NAACP does an annual show, if you will, annually talk TV show aspect of it, and they had a nice big deal, if you will. And I looked at it, and there was no recognition of Dr. King, no recognition whatsoever. Right after, I mean, the fact of the matter is, his birthday was just that was the other day, and I thought that was interesting. Didn't have, but on the other hand, here's President Trump, our President of the United States, acknowledging the history, if you will, a very critical history, and then coming out of him, you can imagine the many of the controversies that he put together based on what he shared and saved, if you will. I thought that was a very interesting piece. So anyway, there was a lot of goodies. So hopefully that could be maybe that's something that it could be a progressive piece from a futuristic standpoint. Got me? We continue to basically honor Dr. King, but at the same time start being a little bit more progressive, bring it up to date, so to speak. Got me? Where people are not looking at it from the standpoint of the skin color piece. Got me? We're all U.S. citizens. Bang, big time.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, that's a little piece we want to make it throw out there. That's Black History Month. So that's where we are, and I want to thank you with that. And then next year maybe we'll do something else. And maybe you all might be able to share with us, and you can always get in touch with us here at the Oregon Voters Digest, here at local cable television. Okay? So now what we're going to do now, we're just going to kind of bring up some of the things, more current events. I think we normally we'd spend more time in the we'd spend more time with the local event here in Oregon because of the issues that we're dealing with right now, because it's a major issue right now. We got a major issue aspect of it, but we're going to spend. There was some interviews that the president brought up. It was very current, and I mean it was. And the other thing it did that I saw in this particular interview was when he was running for office, he said he was going to be doing that way. But then there was other thing from a historical standpoint. He ran once before, right? You got me? But before that, he campaigned. His first campaign out of the swamp to run for office was his talk show called The Apprentice. The Apprentice. And it was interesting, when I look at it now as a layperson, I think about the Apprentice program, him generating his staff, getting the sharp people. See, he'd have this show, and he'd have a whole bunch of folks, as if to say he was interviewing his staffers. He was interviewing his folks and getting the top-notch people, and after getting them out there and making them go out and say, okay, fine, go out there and here's a project. Come back and tell me what you've done, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then he'd have that discussion, and people be sitting around the table. Oh no, you don't know what you're talking about. You're fired next. Okay, right on down the line. And it was kind of a fun show, and it was an exciting show. Mm-hmm. So you tune in. Because it wasn't just the lay stuff, people just reading off the scripts, if you will. It was just a bang, bang, bang. I mean, it was there was no such thing to be reading the monitor. You would deal, and I thought I can talk to it that way now because I looked at the show too, quite reverently, if you will, and a lot of other folks did. So it's as if to say, had he not had that show, there's a question mark as to whether or not he would have been elected. As far as I'm concerned, he stayed on TV for quite some time, talking to the masses. He had a very popular show aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, so now all of a sudden, they finally figured out, well, gee whiz, we can't have this man serving into. So he tried to run for another office. Said, no way. So during that particular time, the only thing they hit on him, they didn't give him the respect of being the definition of who he was as a developer. And I understand that because I was a developer at one time. I built some stuff. I built the senior center, and it's very complex, and that's a tough nut to.
Well, I think what we saw yesterday with the Donald Trump, Volodymyr Zelensky,
and share that with the rest of the folks about the fact that a lot of them didn't see that.
Right. So yesterday, Thursday, February 28th.
Right.
Volodymyr Zelensky, or no, actually no, it was Friday.
And they can Google it.
You can look up the entire. You go to YouTube, you can see the entire exchange. Volodymyr Zelensky came to the White House, was in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and other members of the
Rubio, Secretary of State.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio,
yep.
Other members of the U.S. Joint Joint Chiefs of Staff, and they had a good conversation for 30 to 40 minutes, and a very heated conversation for about 10. And Volodymyr Zelensky and Donald Trump got into kind of a heated argument, along with J.D. Vance, got into a very heated argument about the U.S.'s involvement in the Ukrainian with Ukrainian defensive, or being involved in defending Ukraine against Russia in ongoing matters after Russia and Ukraine agree to stop fighting, and it was pretty powerful. I think what it showed was, we'll go back to what Bruce was saying. Donald Trump is a world-renowned businessman.
Yeah.
He knows how to negotiate.
Yeah, that's his resume.
That's what he brought that is different from every other politician in Washington, D.C. He is a businessman. He knows how to negotiate business deals. Yeah. That is what Donald Trump does. That is different than what politicians do, which is tell you what you want to hear and then fail to follow through with the promises that they made to you. They tell you what you want to hear, and then they don't do what they told you they were going to do.
But on that particular point, let's be fair with them to a certain degree. When they campaign to you, they tell you, they identify with the issues that are relevant in your particular area.
Politician. Yes.
But then when you get elected and you get down to the main course, like they all get together and say, wait a minute, look at this, the way this program runs. It doesn't talk about your issues.
Right. Well, they get into the office and then they realize.
Well, the other place, everybody just basically follow the same format, because now they're saying, I'm drawing a check.
Right. Exactly. But everything that Donald Trump promised on the campaign trail before he was elected in 2024 and took office in 2025, he has followed through with. He has cleaned up the border. He has worked to clean up fentanyl. He has put in everyone that he promised he would put in to his cabinet. He has done a lot of things. One of the things that he really worked towards doing is ending the war with Ukraine and Russia. That is something that he promised that he would do, and he has repeatedly said that if he was in office during the last 4 years, that this war would have never started, because it didn't start when he was in office the previous 4 years. So the heated exchange happened because J.D. Vance said that during the previous administration, there was no diplomacy, and Putin invaded Ukraine, and then President Zelensky got upset and started to interject and say, what diplomacy are you talking about? And then J.D. Vance said there was no diplomacy during President Biden's tenure as president. And President Zelensky said, well, in 2014, Putin went back on diplomacy and invaded and took Crimea. And then President Trump said, I wasn't president in 2014.
Yeah, right.
And President Zelensky said, and then he kept trying to go and give examples of every time that Vladimir Putin went back on negotiating deals with the Europeans, with the Americans, and every time that Volodymyr Zelensky gave those arguments, Donald Trump said, President Donald Trump said, I was not president when that happened. President Trump said, when I was president, President Putin respected me, and I think he was trying to say he feared me, and he wasn't going to make a move on Ukraine during those points, and therefore, during my 4 years as president, he didn't try and pull any of the stuff that he pulled during the previous presidency.
On that point, John, I think that when he ran the first time, being from New York, that was his platform. He was a businessman,
right,
developer type, and that the politics basically was part and parcel of selling a project because he had to get the sign off. See,
yes.
So he got into politics that way by basically saying, okay, fine, I need to contribute to so and so. He got into politics, okay, and when he ran, he ran with the understanding that he was a developer from New York, okay. And he's a quick learner too, by the way.
Right.
And because it wasn't just New York, because he was developing all over. He was building stuff and doing things all over the world for that matter. And so consequently, and then like I said, he had the apprenticeship program piece. He had
the apprentice,
piece, And so he just accidentally got there. When he got there his first time around, the whole goddamn electorate, as far as the politicians, all of them down there and now in New York, Washington. In Washington, wait a minute, he shouldn't be here. Got me? And they said, well, look here. Well, who is he? What is he going to do? Oh, well, all I want to do is talk about his personal side. I want to talk about the sex piece. New York, big time city. We're going to talk about sex. We're going to talk about his kids. We're going to talk about this. And he said, what is this all about?
Well, so
you see what I'm saying? I'm just saying.
Yes, I do.
So his platform, his real platform, he learned then what the issue was, because the issues were at the table, but he never had access to that because that wasn't in his foyer.
So what I would like to touch on though is I think what he learned early on was name calling for the sake of name, or when you're trying to make a deal doesn't work, right?
Right.
But when someone has no power, you can name call them till the cow comes home, because name calling them, what are they going to do to you, right? So he's done that with his opponents in the past, but in this instance with Putin,
different ball game.
It's a different ball. Putin's killing people with this war. Ukrainians and Russians are dying, and President Trump has been very diplomatic in that he is not calling Putin a dictator. He is not calling him an aggressor. He is not calling him a war criminal. That's because he knows through his business dealings that if he does that, Putin will stop negotiating. He will step away from the table, because that's what President Biden did for the last 3 years. He called him a dictator. He called him an aggressor. He called him a war criminal. And Vladimir Putin refused to speak to President Biden or his staff for the last 3 years. And that's why this war has been going on for 3 years.
But now remember Putin is Russia.
Right.
They've got their issues.
They've got their own issues. That's correct.
President of Russia.
That's correct. Okay?
So consequently, their definition is their lane, if you will.
Yes.
And in many ways, the country had been sort of like it was sort of like pieced off in certain. Some companies were able. Some parts of the country went off this way and this way and this way. They broke up Russia, the total Russia. So consequently, that was an issue. Whoever the president was.
The whole how Russia became Russia to this day,
a whole different ballgame.
USSR, the destruction of the USSR. Now, I think it was ultimately a good thing that the USSR was dismantled. The USSR was dangerous, and I'm not a Putin sympathizer in any way.
But we weren't fighting. My point is, it was the definition we used during that particular time was the Cold War.
The Cold War, that's correct.
So everybody just
Russia
talking
was
about
a scary entity.
But that was their entity.
Yes, it was.
That's what they did. And so whoever was the president, they had their own piece about how it was going to be divided. They had their own definition.
Right.
Okay, you got me? And so I'm just saying that was their discussion. And so when we got involved, and when you start thinking about the economy and trades and all this, that, and the other, everybody gets involved with the trade piece, trying to get.
And this war and the consequences of Russia invading Ukraine and starting this war has been devastating to the Russian economy.
Oh yeah.
U.S. relations has been at an all-time low for Russia. They lost all of the American business that was in Russia. The sanctions that have been put on Russia have been devastating to their economy. And I, like President Trump, just want peace. I understand Putin should be held accountable for what he has done to the Ukrainians. He has done some horrible things. But Donald Trump understands that if he labels Putin the way that world leaders want Putin to be labeled, that Vladimir Putin will not stand or sit at the negotiating table, and Vladimir Putin will not stop this war, and therefore Donald Trump will not label him as other world leaders have labeled him. Which is hard for some people to understand, and that's why they're labeling Donald Trump once again as a Russia sympathizer, as a Putin puppet. It makes no sense. Like we were talking about earlier. Donald Trump is a world-class businessman. It doesn't make sense for Donald Trump to start pointing the finger or start calling Putin what he really is, because he wants to get to get a business deal done out of this.
But understand what I'm saying. The definition of Russia back in those old days, they were competing also too, big time.
Yes.
And the nuclear run piece, and then they got to the point where they were just as equal to us in many ways.
They had more nuclear weapons than we did.
And today, to a certain degree, you know what I'm saying?
No, they had to they had to denuclearize.
Yeah, but when they did that piece, they also divided the country a bit. See, got me?
Yeah.
Even Ukraine at one point in time was Russia.
No, it was Ukraine. Some of the Baltics. They were all USSR.
Yes. So all I'm trying to say, all I'm saying is that just even as a layperson, naturally you get what you can out of the deal, and you look at the news and this, that, and the other, and a lot of times that language, are basically stuff that we have no access to, in terms of really what's going on. So they just basically use the Cold War thing as been. They're not shooting anything. They've got the nuclear race and all this, that, and the other, and those things are going all over the place. But now today, you got a person there that had knowledge because when he ran for office, he was a developer all over the country, all over the world for that matter. So consequently, when he's sitting at the table, 95% of the people that are sitting in the Congress, if you will, had no idea. They didn't have his background.
He's a no-nonsense man.
Well,
remember what I don't know if you're familiar with the story. I think I heard it on Hannity.
Yeah.
Where Trump was dealing with someone in the Taliban.
Yeah.
And Trump was sitting at the table with this Taliban leader.
Yeah.
And he was talking through an interpreter. And he said, "You're going to stop doing what you're doing, or I'm going to drop a bomb on your home, and you're going to cease to exist." And the interpreter stopped, and they looked at Donald Trump, and Donald Trump said, "Continue, say what I said." And then the interpreter said what he said, and then Donald Trump dropped the picture of the Taliban leader's home on the table and walked out of the room. And the message was quite clear. Donald Trump was not messing around. He's not messing around with other world leaders. He wants peace, and he will get it by any means necessary, which terrifies some people. I don't think he would escalate to nuclear war. I don't think that's in the best interest of anyone in this world. That would be quite destructive to the entire world if we did that.
We wouldn't have a world.
We wouldn't have a world, but Donald Trump is not afraid to do what is necessary to ensure that Americans are safe.
The other thing that was really neat about this whole piece was that normally those kinds of negotiations and this, that, and the other, behind doors, closed doors.
They do.
Even in the Congress, they always had this stuff behind closed. He brought this out this was probably the first time the public ever saw what was going on in such a serious issue outside, and giving you the opportunity to see the whole piece. You got me?
Well, it was, and I don't think it was intended to be, but it happened that way.
No, but in all due respect, what's his name, Zelensky, he was the
Zelensky,
one,
yeah.
He said, I want the press to be there. He figured he had more, see, and Trump had said to him, behind closed doors, they had that meeting behind closed doors. Well, I want the press to be there, I want this, that, and the other. And he said, okay, hey, I love the press, because I can talk about, besides this other issue, I can talk about other issues too. So when he did that piece, he did that. But they also talked about what he was going to do, what you're going to get out of this meeting and what I'm going to get out of the meeting. And they negotiated the deal about the medals, the other whatever, that we were looking for to basically.
Well, that was negotiated before this meeting
That's what I'm
started.
saying. That was behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. Got my point? So the plan, he knew that. They drew up the paperwork there, and you're going to sign it at that time, and I'm going to agree, and we do our thing.
Well, because
that
of this
happen.
spat, though, that deal fell through.
No, the spat. No, it wasn't the spat. It was that he didn't sign it.
Right, because of the argument that occurred in the Oval Office, Donald Trump refused to sign the deal.
Yeah, he refused because this is the plan we talked about the door. Bye.
Right. Well, so like I said, after this argument, they went behind closed doors. They had a conversation for about an hour, and then Donald Trump said, "Get out of the White House and leave."
Yeah.
And then he posted on social media that he believed that President Zelensky wasn't ready for peace, and that when he's ready, he can come back. But at this time, they're not. That the discussions were done.
Okay, and then again, I'm just looking from my eyes. What I saw when he didn't adhere to the plan that they had talked about initially, there was nothing to talk about. Because when you're talking to, and when I say I built a couple of buildings or whatever, but the bottom line, when you sit there talking to the union labor force, carpenters and whatever, and you're talking about it, you got to strike a deal. And if they don't understand what my bottom line is, and vice versa, hey, see you next time around.
Yeah.
So when he basically they walked out from the media, it was over with. The only thing the only way he could come back to the table is very simple. Oh, by the way, give me the papers. I'll sign them right now. Just hold the guy. He didn't do that.
Right. Well,
let's talk some more behind closed doors.
The belief what the promise given to President Zelensky by President Trump was we will not give you military support in your country. We will give you economic support, and that will be a deterrent to Russia to not get involved militarily again.
Well, I disagree with you a little bit about
No, that is what Donald Trump said.
No.
Us being there in an economic fashion. No, that is what Donald Trump said.
Okay.
Sorry, I've been paying attention to this.
But,
Donald Trump said by their presence, by the U.S. being involved economically in Ukraine, that would be enough of a deterrent for Russia to not go back into Ukraine.
And you said Zelensky agreed with that?
No, Zelensky refused that, and he said, you need to put troops. I want security promises.
Okay. So they didn't have any agreement.
So the agreement was we'll give you this we'll do this mineral deal, right?
No.
Before Marco Rubio and someone else, they got the mineral deal figured out, right, beforehand.
Yeah,
when they were in Europe.
And the whole idea he was going to sign it then.
Right, they were going to sign it then in
and that was the
in
deal.
the Oval.
That was the deal.
Right. And part of that deal was the U.S. would be involved economically in Ukraine. And through that economic presence, through the mineral deal, that would be enough of a deterrent for Russia to not invade Ukraine again.
Now, wait a minute. Now check this out, what you just got through saying. Okay, you brought the mineral piece up. The bottom line, that's why Trump said to him, hey, you don't have anything. Because the bottom line, if the U.S. says, I'm not going to be involved in it, Russia just going and just takes it back, and then guess what?
Right.
Then he'll negotiate with Russia about the mineral deal.
Right. So the mineral deal went off the table because
then it's Zelensky.
So, but hold on. Let me finish. So the mineral deal was on the table, but then, and Trump said, as part of the mineral deal, with us being involved economically, Russia will not want to invade you militarily. No, that is, I'm telling you, Bruce.
Listen to what I'm saying to you.
Okay.
Now, we're talking about war, right? He's saying peace, right? Remember, he always made that point that we can make World War X. We might have another World War. But the fact of the matter is, if the U.S. is not there, there's no way that Ukraine has the same power as Russia. There's no way. There's no such thing as equality. They can just go in there and just pick it up overnight.
Okay, so
you hear what I'm saying?
I do, but
and what Russia is not going to.
I think you're failing to understand what I'm saying, which is if we are involved with the mineral deal, that means we're involved economically with Ukraine. Yes? Yes.
But if Ukraine is not there anymore, who are you negotiating with?
Okay, so
Russia.
What I'm saying is if we sign the mineral deal, if we signed it, okay, this is hypothetical. If we signed the mineral deal with Ukraine, if we did do that.
Oh yeah, then it's a different ballgame.
So then we are involved economically with Ukraine.
But we didn't sign it.
Right, okay. Bruce, you got to let me finish before you say that. So if we were in that deal, right, Russia would not invade Ukraine any further because the U.S. was economically involved with Ukraine.
Right.
That was what Trump was saying. Zelensky would not accept that, and he said, you need to put troops in Ukraine. That's what devolved the whole thing.
Who said that?
Zelensky.
He wants the troops.
He wanted troops.
And the arms.
Right. He wanted more, and Trump said,
no.
No, the economic plan will be enough. And Zelensky would not accept that. So that's why it all devolved.
So okay, so he made it very clear that if we're not there, you're done.
Right, and so he said, if we don't, Trump said, you hold the cards. If we pull out, you're left on your own. That is correct. That's what Trump said.
Do you understand that? Now, once he pulls out, then he doesn't have our support, which he needs, because otherwise, then Russia just comes in and takes the whole thing up.
Right.
Do you understand that?
We're saying the same thing, but I'm saying it just a little bit more. If we were involved economically, Trump was promising him that Russia would not get involved again. But because Zelensky was saying, you need to put troops in my country, Trump said, I will not do that. And if you don't sign this mineral deal, then you're on your own.
Right, okay. Now, take your point you just got through saying. The troops are not there. We're not there now, right?
We were never there.
No. We're not there now. Okay, we are there indirectly. We are there. Because we've been giving them all the armament and this, that, and that. All I'm saying is that now that he says we're not there anymore, you're on your own aspect of it. Well, this whole war is about who's got more guns than Ukraine or Russia? Who has more weapons?
Well, we did until we gave them all to Ukraine.
That's what I'm saying. So Russia, all
we don't have them anymore.
Okay,
we gave them to Ukraine.
So what's that?
We gave all of our excess military weapons to Ukraine.
Oh no, not excess. No.
No, we don't have as many weapons as you think we do.
We don't know that.
We gave a lot of them to Ukraine.
We've been told that now. I understand from a media standpoint.
As someone who worked in the military sector as in manufacturing, we don't have as many weapons as you think we do.
Okay. But the fact of the matter is they don't have as many as Russia. That's right. I'll put it that way.
Russia's making a lot. They're making a lot more weapons than we think they are.
All I'm saying is that if we pull out, he's basically saying to Ukraine, hey, look, I tell you what, okay, it's gonna be messy, it's gonna be crazy, but hey, okay, fine. It's something, the way it's laid out now, Russia then will be basically taking over Ukraine.
Yeah, you're right.
And then once they do this, then the minerals are going to be there with Russia, right? Then one has to then negotiate with Russia for the minerals if we need them.
Yeah.
And he would do that. And I think that the president made sure that it was done in such a fashion, the way he was communicating, hey, I will definitely go back and negotiate with Russia because now they own that property. That's their real estate.
Listen,
Right?
the Russians can make a lot more AK-47s than we can make guns.
Okay.
They could do. They're poised in a position, and look at the losses that they suffered in World War II. They suffered tens of millions of losses, and they still are thriving as a nation.
Yeah.
They can lose a lot more people than Ukrainians can.
Yeah, right. But then again, from the viewing audience standpoint, and just like we're having this discussion, as we say, that's why it's crazy times right now. See, and that's why we need to be more transparent about things going on now. And that's why I like the idea that that what we saw yesterday was a first. That was historical in itself.
Yeah.
Because a lot of those so-called back and forth type things, just like we just went through, normally is behind doors. Mm-hmm. See, that's why I've said, for the Voters Digest, we're very transparent, if you will. Got me? And sometimes as you're going through discussion, it's all based on your background. It's our access, right? You got me? And so we have the time to go back and forth along that line. But at the end of the day, we can agree to disagree.
Yeah.
And then hopefully, if it's very important, like now, the way it is now, guess what? We're gonna go back and we're gonna follow up because there's gonna be some follow up. And I would say that the show's gonna be on. It's on today because it's on Sunday. It's on Sunday, and so consequently, there's gonna be all kinds of discussions. There's gonna be all kinds of shows on Sunday about this issue.
Yeah.
And our discussion will be maybe a little different than others. And then you've got two major channels, one Fox and one CNN, right? You got me? And then you got two other entities, one Republican and one Democrat. Those are the two parties, so to speak. We got a whole bunch of other folks. But everybody's going to be talking about this stuff. And so consequently, we're saying to the average lay person, look here, have those discussions. Don't fight about it. Just have those discussions.
Exactly.
And then you can, just like John was saying, you can just get right on his fact checker right there, and you can Google YouTube, and you can get on the first part of the deal, just like he said, and then you come up with your interpretation. But please don't fight among one another. Just say you're having a cold war, so to speak. You can just talk about this stuff for days. So anyway, that's why we want to spend this time. We spent a whole hour. We could have spent 2 or 3 more hours. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, we could have.
But no problem. So we may just want to have an extension of this piece or something like that next time around. But we'll bring them up on that the next time around. Okay, good. Well, look, we're at this point now. We're just going to kind of give it up. Like I said, look at it. We spent the whole time on this piece. Normally, we wanted to focus on our local area aspect of it, but we'll come back and talk a little bit about that maybe next time around. But we'll keep everybody abreast. But do get together with your neighbors. Do pull out your computers if you got one. A lot of times trying to access that stuff, that high tech stuff. See, with me, I don't have mine. I can't even operate the equipment that John has. This young mind, these guys can do this stuff overnight. Well, but the bottom line is that I got a little background on this stuff. No problem. But enjoy yourself. Take care. We'll see you next time around, and enjoy yourself. Very important. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
See how much.